More recently known for his punditry on Sky Sports, ex-professional footballer Chris Kamara signed for Brentford in 1981 and became the first black player to represent the club.
I'd only just moved back to Portsmouth. I'd obviously been to Portsmouth, went to Swindon and then got another move back to Portsmouth. And Frank Burrows, who was my coach at Swindon, got his first manager's job at Portsmouth. So he quite liked me and thought, right, I could do well for him again at Portsmouth. The chairman was the same chairman in my first period there. It was a fellow called John Deacon, no longer with us, because it was quite a long time ago, I have to say. Yeah. I played a few games, scored a couple of goals early on from midfield, and then Frank was actually at a funeral, a fellow called Fred Ford, an ex-manager. Frank was at his funeral, and I got a call from the secretary, and the secretary said the chairman, John Deacon, had agreed a deal with Brentford Football Club, a swap deal for myself and David Crown. What they agreed to do was for me to go and meet Fred Callaghan. Fred sat me down with Ron Harris, Chopper, who I knew very well, a legend. Didn't know Fred from Adam. So I had a chat with them too, and they sort of like outlined their thoughts for Brentford Football Club. So then it became a different scenario, you know. We'll soon be into the Championship and out of League One. And then if we get the right backing from Martin Lange, who was the chairman at the time, another one, God rest his soul, then, you know, Brentford could go and join the likes of QPR and Fulham in the top division. So thought, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. And my first game was against Burnley, and it was quite momentous really, but it wasn't really thought of much back in the day. You know, I was the first black player to play for Swindon, the first black player to play for Brentford in 1981. So that wasn't like a momentous thing. You know, if it was this day and age, you know, the scenario would be totally different, and, you know, social media and television would be absolutely all over it. But then it was just a little line in the paper when I was at Swindon, first player to play for, black player to play for Swindon, and the first black player to play for Brentford. And I made my debut against Burnley in a 0-0 draw. It was brilliant playing with Terry Orlock, great, taught me a lot. Hopefully I taught him a lot as well. Scoring 11 goals from midfield, no penalties as well, I might add. I wasn't on the penalties that season. I could have ended up being the Brentford top goal scorer if I was on the penalties. But I think that endeared me to the crowd straight away. If you look back into the early 80s when racism was rife, even at Swindon, there might have been a few murmurings. There was certainly murmurings when I was at Portsmouth. You know, there was a national front element in the crowd at Portsmouth. Only a small minority, but they would make themselves heard by me entering the field of play. I can honestly say, in the whole of my time at Brentford Football Club, that never ever happened. I was accepted from the beginning. So to be able to score 11 goals in my first season was just, you know, the icing on the cake. You know, we lost Tony Mahoney through a broken leg. And if we hadn't lost Tony, it was against my former club, Swindon. We were by far the best team, but we couldn't score. Desire and attitude, first class, but couldn't stick the ball in the back of the net. So we were missing a goal scorer. And that was the only thing that stopped us being a really good team. We had a really good run, and then to see 20,000 Brentford fans at Wembley was just brilliant. It was magnificent. It was so good. Unfortunately, we let ourselves down on the day. It was 90 degrees heat, and, you know, if you were dehydrated, it certainly took it out of you. And, you know, you can't make excuses. Wigan were a very good team, there's no doubt about that. When I look at the players who've gone on from that Wigan team, they were a good team, but we didn't perform. And that was my last game for Brentford. Sky's first ever commentary game was in the September. So the fella in charge of it was bloke called Andrew Hornet, and he rang me up and he said, would you be interested in being the guest on the first ever live game, Sheffield United versus Sunderland? And I said, yeah. I said, Sheffield's just down the road from me. And he went, no, you've got to come to Sky Studios in Osterley. So I got on the train, did the game. They were quite happy with what they saw, seemed to like what they saw. And I more or less got the opportunity every time I was available to go and be one of the pundits. At that particular time, I thought I was going to get into trouble. And of course, I was doing reports for Soccer Saturday. So they said, look, health and safety have said that you can't go in the gantry today. You're going to have to go into the corner of the fratting end. So we went into the corner of the fratting end and we geared up almost near the corner flag. So when I was doing my links for Jeff, I could only see most of the game. I couldn't see all of the game. That particular time when Carly Bassett, who's one of my former managers, told me that Jeff was coming to me, and I was stood there waiting, and then Charlie Nicholas in the studio shouted, goal. And then she said, don't worry, you're next. And then Phil Thompson shouted, goal. And then when they came to me, and I was looking over my shoulder, watching the game the whole time, and then they came to me, and Jeff's obviously reading from the video printer.
And we're off to Fratton Park, where there's been a red card, but for who, Chris Kamara?
You have two decisions then. One, you blag it, or two, you be honest and tell the truth. And I told the truth, and basically I had no idea what had gone on.
I don't know, Jeff, has it? I must have missed that. Red card.
As I'm doing my report down the line, the lads were laughing in the studio. Jeff was having some fun with it.
Chris, have you not been watching? I haven't. I don't know where that's come from, Chris. I have no idea what has happened there. What's happened, Chris?
I don't know, Jeff.
I did goals on Sunday the next day, travelled home that evening. Nobody really mentioned it after that. And then I got a phone call on the Monday morning. What's the nearest TV station to you? So I said, Yorkshire Television. How long will it take you to get there? 15 minutes. Okay, Fox Sports in America have seen the clip of you missing the sending off. Get down there, they want to speak to you. Dutch television spoke to me. Chinese television spoke to me. There was radio stations from all over the world and all over the UK. And all of a sudden, from being a zero, Sky are getting all this publicity, and it turned out you have defining moments in your TV career, and probably the one that took me outside of football fans was that one. 2/3 of the nation were racist back in those days, and it was an acceptable thing, you know, to watch programs like Alf Garnett and Love Thy Neighbour, and I would walk in the dressing room and, you know, the lads would stop talking about those shows, you know, and that sort of stuff. And without realising it, because they were, you know, quite a lot of them weren't racist towards me, but they were laughing at stuff that they shouldn't have really been laughing at. And it was a joke and it was funny and all those types of things. And, you know, society was totally different back in those days. But now, nobody sees my colour anymore. They see Cammy, the character, and I've got to be thankful for that. It was part and parcel. I grew up with it. I grew up with my dad getting arrested every time there was any trouble in the neighbourhood. You know, the neighbours treated us as different people. Like I said, that was then. You know, things have totally changed now. It isn't the same now. You know, it's still around. There's no doubt about that. Racism is still around. But when the likes of myself and other black players who played middle 70s to late 70s, early 80s, we know exactly what it was like for us, because the culture, the whole culture, if you said anything, if you say something now, you can bring it to your attention. You can, you know, people will all jump on the wagon and slaughter somebody for it. You couldn't do that back then. You could not do that in no way, shape or form. You had to take it on the chin. And if you didn't, you were a trouble causer, you know, so, yeah. So I'm so glad it is how it is, but it's never going to go away.